The ECB leaves interest rates unchanged at 2%. Trump unveils an AI action plan to secure global dominance. And Saudi Arabia announces $6.4 billion investments into Syria. Good evening and welcome to the Economic Bulletin. I'm Mark Summers. We start off with the European Central Bank, which has left interest rates unchanged after cutting 8 times in a year, biding its time while Brussels and Washington try to negotiate a trade deal that could ease persistent uncertainty over tariffs. The ECB's president, Christine Lagarde, noted that the rate decision was unanimous. She highlighted that they had successfully concluded the disinflationary cycle that had been a challenge in recent months, adding that the cycle had led the bank to implement 8 interest rate cuts in 9 months, moving from 400 to 200 basis points. Lagarde added that the sooner the trade uncertainty was resolved, the less uncertainty there would be to deal with. She also noted that such a resolution would be welcomed by all economic actors, including the ECB. The ECB's Christine Lagarde has lauded the successful end of the disinflationary cycle, which led to 8 interest rate cuts in 9 months from 400 to 200 basis points. She expects higher public investment in defence and infrastructure to support future growth. Lagarde also described the digital euro as the digital form of cash.
Over time, higher public investment in defence and infrastructure should also support growth. More than ever, the Governing Council considers it crucial to urgently strengthen the euro area and its economy in the present geopolitical environment. The outlook for inflation is more uncertain than usual as a result of the volatile global trade policy environment. A stronger euro could bring inflation down further than expected. So to argue that digital cash is a nuclear bomb, I think that's a little bit over the top. We're not holding nuclear bombs in our pockets, as far as I know.
ECB President Christine Lagarde there. Now, Britain and India have signed a free trade agreement during Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United Kingdom. The deal is projected to boost bilateral trade by an additional £25.5 billion UK pounds by 2040. This deal aims to reduce tariffs on a wide range of goods, from textiles to cars, and open up greater markets for businesses in both countries. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer lauded the agreement as a historic day and a landmark moment.
Living standards are putting more money in the pockets of working people to wages, and hundreds of millions of pounds to regions and nations.
Now moving to Euro-Asia relations, and Chinese President Xi Jinping has urged leaders from China and the European Union to demonstrate vision and leadership and make strategic choices that meet public expectations. Xi highlighted the significant progress made in China-EU diplomatic ties over the past 5 decades, noting that the outcomes achieved in exchanges and cooperation since their establishment. He reiterated that in the face of accelerating global transformation and a turbulent world, it's crucial for both Chinese and EU leaders to step up and make the right strategic decisions. Meanwhile, Chinese Premier Li Qiang has urged the European Union to expand trade and investment, emphasizing that closer cooperation is vital for economic resilience and navigating external challenges. Speaking alongside European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Li advocated for upholding free trade and multilateralism to stabilize global supply chains. He proposed focusing on services, innovation, the green economy, and third-party cooperation, promising greater market access and IP protection in China. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has stated that the trade relationship between China and the European Union needs more balance. During a meeting with Chinese Premier Li Qiang, she noted the rebalancing and that rebalancing is a necessity, and it is also in the interest of a stronger relationship between the two countries. Chinese Premier Li Qiang highlighted the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between China and the EU in 2025, noting their steady developments and fruitful outcomes. To Asia now, and South Korea's central bank has revealed that the economy grew at the fastest pace in more than a year in the second quarter, surpassing market expectations. This surge was primarily fueled by rebounding consumer spending and a significant increase in technology exports. According to advanced central bank estimates, gross domestic product (GDP) expanded a seasonally adjusted 0.6% in the April to June period, a strong recovery from the 0.2% contraction in the previous quarter. Exports jumped 4.2%, largely led by semiconductors, after a 0.6% decline in the first quarter amidst US tariff uncertainty. Annually, Asia's fourth largest economy grew 0.5% in the second quarter, a notable improvement from zero growth in the first quarter. Moody's ratings have warned that Kenya faces persistently high debt servicing costs, largely due to its reliance on the domestic market to fund budget shortfalls. Moody's anticipates around two-thirds of Kenya's financing, or just under 4% of gross domestic product annually, will come from domestic sources, straining debt affordability. Despite a projected narrower fiscal deficit, Moody's suggests this target could be missed due to ongoing pressures and structurally weak revenue generation. The ratings agency stresses Kenya needs a new IMF financing program to manage its $3.5 billion average annual external debt repayments. The International Monetary Fund has concluded its review of Malawi's economy, highlighting significant challenges including low growth, high inflation, and sustainable debt. The nation's gross domestic product growth in 2024 was a mere 1.8%. While inflation hit 27.7% and public debt reached 88% of gross domestic product. The IMF's executive board called for urgent and decisive reforms, stressing the need for fiscal consolidation through increased domestic revenue, tax reforms, and expenditure control. They urge immediate reforms, including boosting revenue, controlling spending, tightening monetary policy, and tackling debt restructuring to stabilize the economy and attract investment. So to the United States, and new applications for US jobless benefits fell to a 3-month low last week, reaching 217,000 for the week ended July 19th. This figure, reported by the Labour Department, was lower than economists' forecasts and marks the 6th consecutive weekly decline, indicating stable labour market conditions. Despite the low unemployment claims, the report noted that sluggish hiring is making it difficult for laid-off workers to find new jobs, and the number of people receiving ongoing benefits increased slightly to 1.955 million for the week ending July 12th. President Donald Trump has touted a recent deal between the United States and NATO whereby European allies would purchase weapons and send them to Ukraine.
Just made a deal with the European Union where they're going to pay the United States of America 100% of the cost of all military equipment. They're going to ship it to the European Union, and then they'll distribute it, and much of it will go to Ukraine. It's been a long time since you've heard those words, because we're in for $350 billion. But now we send it to Europe, and Europe pays. And we had a tremendous NATO meeting a few weeks ago, and it was pretty amazing, actually, what happened. They agreed to go from 2% to 5%, and they had 2% where they didn't pay. They have 5% where they've already paid. That's a big difference. That's trillions of dollars, actually, trillions.
Staying with Trump, and the US president has unveiled an AI action plan to secure global dominance in artificial intelligence, framing it as a critical competition against China. The plan emphasizes exporting US AI software and hardware globally and reducing domestic regulations perceived as hindering AI development. This approach marks a significant shift from former President Joe Biden's policy, which restricted international access to advanced AI chips. Now, for more on this, we're joined from Chicago by the economic policy advisor, Tariq El-Refai, who is joining us now on Qnews Economic Bulletin. Thanks for being there with us. So how does the Trump administration's AI blueprint differ from that of the previous administration under Joe Biden with their high fence approach?
Yeah, it's completely different. It's very opposite from the strategy. The strategy of the Biden administration was very similar to what the European Union was doing, in that the need, or the belief that there's a need to set up controls and some kind of regulation of AI. But what Trump has done, he's kind of made the Wild West to try to encourage development of all kinds, and remove barriers which he thought were barriers to the development of AI.
So can I take it from you, calling it a Wild West that you don't approve?
Well, with doing this, there are obviously positives and negatives. The positive will be that you're going to see a record flow into AI investment, more so than you have seen in the past. So from that perspective, you're going to see all types of development. And without the regulation, again, you will see development on multiple AI fronts, which you may or may not have seen on, having these barriers. However, the reason for the barriers was to restrict and to try to control some of the ethical, or relieve some of the ethical concerns with AI, as well as maybe some of the shortfalls. And if you look at what the EU is doing, the EU has announced that it's going down the opposite path of Trump, and feeling that they now need to invest in their own AI, their own cloud storage, because they want to make sure that they have a better or a more secure environment than the no control environment of the US.
So would you say there are potential consequences of expanding US AI exports to allies whilst loosening the controls?
Well, the EU obviously is concerned about AI experts, and particularly when it comes to cloud storage. Cloud storage, as you know, is a huge business. If you look at Amazon, for example, big player in the field, and the EU wants to reduce its reliance on US-based cloud storage companies, because they fear that, like I said, there are some possible ethical control concerns with not regulating AI. And of course, even some of the earlier developers of AI were saying, hey, AI is great, has a bright future. There are multiple and endless applications for AI. However, it needs to be done in an ethical way, and it has to be monitored.
And when it comes to AI technology falling perhaps into the hands of adversaries like China, does this policy shift undermine efforts to prevent that happening?
Well, that was a primary objective for Trump to do so. He wanted to make sure that the U.S. leapfrogs China, whereas now it was seemed that under the Biden administration that China is gaining a stronger foothold and possibly leapfrogging the U.S. in this technology. So that was the primary concern. It was to help overcome this and ensure the U.S. is the dominant player in AI going forward.
So when it comes to risks of AI chip diffusion and competition safeguards, is this repealing of the Biden era restrictions, is this going to be potentially dangerous for the United States?
I mean, I obviously see this as having some pitfalls. And again, with the regulation, I understand and agree that there needs to be some regulation and oversight. Obviously, the specifics of how the Biden administration put controls on the regulation of AI companies, this is up for technology companies really to determine whether or not it prohibits them or hinders them from development, especially when it comes to competing with countries such as China. So, there are positives and negatives to both sides. However, I do feel that possibly, having some type of regulation would be beneficial versus having none.
And are there particular tech companies in the United States which are potentially going to benefit more than others?
Benefit more than others? I don't think so. I think it's going to be a benefit for all the companies. It's just a matter of with the restrictions that were placed under the Biden administration, are these companies now going to develop into areas which they were not allowed to in the past, or would they continue along the development path that they were going in? I think, as I mentioned, earlier, is we're going to see a record flow of investment into the AI space now, which I think is positive overall. However, if there aren't any regulations or controls placed down the line, it's always good to let people, what they call play in the sandbox until you see how things are developing, and then start putting some restrictions on it. So I hope this is how it goes, and I hope it's not left to be the wild, wild west for many years to come.
And do you think America is securing its role as the global AI leader with these new plans, if indeed, as you say, they might add some restrictions in a little bit later on?
I do. I really believe that this will secure two main reasons. Obviously, the largest capital market in the world is the U.S., and of course, the largest tech development market in the world is in the U.S. So you put these two together and you remove restrictions, you're going to see a lot of development. So without a doubt, I see this. However, going down the road, I really believe that there needs to be some type of oversight and regulation.
Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Q News, Tariq El-Rafai, who is joining us from Chicago. Thank you very much indeed. Now, let's get the latest developments on U.S. tariff policy.
Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully take office of President of the United States.
Capitol open, the Americans and reciprocity. Mexico. Canada.
Greenland.
So to U.S. tariffs then, and Italy's industry minister, Adolfo Urso, has said that the European Union needs a truly fair and sustainable tariff deal with the United States, hailing the agreements already signed by Britain and Japan. French Finance Minister Eric Lombard also noted that France wanted to give the US and EU negotiations space to continue, but that if they did not result in a deal, EU members would decide how to respond. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova has stated that rising trade tariffs carried risks for the economy of the United States and the whole world. Zakharova noted that US actions could lead to a fragmentation of the world economy, and the US had become a source of additional instability in world trade. South Korea's finance ministry has announced that talks between South Korea and the United States officials regarding US tariffs have been postponed due to a scheduling conflict for US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. A military spokesman informed reporters at the airport, where South Korean Finance Minister Chol was preparing to depart for Washington, that the US side conveyed the meeting should be possible soon. Minister Koo was slated to meet with Secretary Bessent on Friday, July 25th in Washington, with the critical objective of securing a deal to exempt South Korea's economy from Trump's impending 25% tariffs set to commence on August 1st. Syria and Saudi Arabia have signed 47 investment agreements worth $6.4 billion in Damascus. These deals, announced at the Syrian-Saudi Investment Forum, aim to significantly boost Syria's economy. The investments span real estate, telecommunications, and finance, among other sectors. Planned projects include housing, the reconstruction of war-damaged areas, the development of tourism, medical and entertainment sites. Syrian Information Minister Hamza al-Mustafa anticipates these agreements will generate roughly 50,000 direct and 150,000 indirect job opportunities. Now, to talk more about this for us, we are joined from Washington by Middle East and Gulf strategy expert and director at the Orient Research Center in Washington, D.C., Dr. Samir Al-Taqi. Thank you very much for being here with us on Qnews. So let's start with the big picture. How significant, then, is this more than $6 billion in Saudi investments for Syria's economic recovery?
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really honored. I think it is significant. The amount of investment is quite wide, and it will have, in case it would succeed, it will have immense impact on the situation in Syria regarding either at the economic level or even at the social level. But the problem now is the great amount of uncertainty, first of all, because of the still the national peace among Syrians has not been established. There is those clashes that happened in Suwaida, and all the elements that would add a lot to the instability, political instability, and economic instability. The main issue at this level, also at the economic level, is that there are no available system for investment in Syria. The rule of law, the judiciary system had been totally dismantled and had been replaced by many of them are Sharia people. Would they be able to tackle the concerns about the rule of law, about the freedom of investment, the role that the Saudis would like to have in the economy, the banking system? So there is lots of ambiguity about this issue. I think those agreements will help in a way or another to foster a better organization, because there is a total collapse of the Syrian bureaucracy in Syria. This is hindering really the capability of the private sector in investing in many fields. So I think this is a challenge. It is a great opportunity, but it is a big challenge for the Syrian economy and Syrian regime.
The fragile security situation and the problems in Suwaida, and also Syria, of course, under ongoing sanctions at the moment. So does that mean that there are particular risks for Saudi investors?
I think the Saudis, first of all, they came and knowing that they are gambling in a way or another and giving a chance to the Syrian government to succeed. So I think they are quite aware. I was working with them in terms of organizing lots of the element of the events going on. But at the end of the day, the situation on the ground, not only in Sweden, the whole situation on the ground is not yet stable, meaning that many of the Syrian components are not happy with the constitutional declaration of Mr. al-Shara, which gives a full rule to the HTS, Hayat Tahrir Sham, and which is regarded in many for in the eyes of the many Syrians that this is a radical Islamic jihadist organization. And so at the end of the day, what Syria needs is a national agreement about the model of the Syrian state. Many components, not only the religious component, but also the ethnic, and many Sunnis, secular people are very much keen to have a kind of a democratic, pluralistic Syria, which is without this element, I think the reconciliation at the national level will not occur, and this will hinder to a large extent the stability and the even security of the Syrian nation, especially that there are many neighbors in the region that are keen to intervene just in case there are any problems in the any disagreement among the Syrians. They are trying. The Israelis were trying. The Iranians, the Turks. So the political stability, I think, is the main challenge and the main factor that will decide about the success of any rehabilitation of the Syrian economy.
Okay, and what sectors would you expect to benefit most from these agreements? And how quickly do you think we might see any kind of real impact on the ground in Syria?
I think it will have definitely a positive impact, because lots of those investments are regarding building hospitals, building some hotels, and also the infrastructure, and also regarding the energy sector. So this will allow, to a certain extent, a little solution. You know, we have in Syria unemployment rate which is reaching now 72% of male population, which is huge. Poverty and even really the poverty had developed to a large extent, and even some areas there is some family. I think in this respect, we need to take into account that any investment would be very much positive and received, and it will have a very good impact, I think. But limited. I think the energy sector will need at least 2 or 3 years to be constituted. That I think the main issue here is that the industry is totally crippled because of the problems in energy, and the fact that we have a very shrinked national market. The market is because people are became really poor and no more able to buy goods, and they are living on the minimum. The volume of the market is very small.
Well, thank you very much indeed for your insights. We will continue to watch to see what happens in Syria and hope for the best for their economic development. That was Middle East and Gulf strategy expert and director at the Orient Research Center in Washington, D.C., Dr. Samir El-Taqi. Thank you very much for joining us here on Q News. Now back to our economic news, and Turkey's central bank has reduced its key interest rate by 300 basis points to 43%, surprising markets with a larger than expected cut. This marks the first rate reduction since April's hike, which followed political turmoil. The central bank's decision signals growing confidence in its efforts to curb inflation, which has been steadily declining and stood at 35.05% in June. The central bank stated that its tight monetary policy will continue until price stability is achieved. This policy is expected to aid disinflation by moderating domestic demand, strengthening the Turkish lira, and improving inflation expectations. Now to the markets, and global stock markets displayed mixed movements on Thursday, with Asian indexes generally rising and European and US futures showing varied performance, reflecting ongoing shifts in investor sentiment. In the United States, the S&P 500 futures were up 0.29%, Nasdaq futures rose 0.28%, while the Dow Jones futures declined 0.23%. In Europe, the UK's FTSE 100 gained 0.91%, Germany's DAX jumped 0.16%, while France's CAC 40 decreased 0.46%. In Asia, the Shanghai Composite hiked 0.65%, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index gained 0.51%, and Japan's Nikkei 225 surged 1.59%. Now, just before we go, time to have a recap of the main economic headlines this evening. The ECB interest rates remain unchanged at 2%. Trump unveils an AI action plan to secure global dominance. And Saudi Arabia announces a $6.4 billion investment into Syria. And that's all for our Economic Bulletin this evening. Don't forget you can follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok as well at Qnews EGY to stay informed. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.